Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Very, very special interview today. 7 years in the making. I've waited 7 years, Tom, and now I'm finally getting it. Chief of Police, Tom Blatter, how you doing?
I am well, thank you.
You've got to be well, as you've made it.
I made it.
You made it. How many years?
Well, with Fitchburg, it'll be 40 and a half years, and I started out in Mineral Point, Wisconsin, home of the Pointers. I started there on my birthday on July 15th, 1976.
Amazing. Amazing. I cannot imagine what has changed, which I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Over the years, you have had to see anything and everything as far as police changes go throughout the years. Kind of walk us through the beginning of time to today.
Well, how much time do we have?
Oh, I'm not telling you, Tom. 7 years.
Okay.
I've been waiting 7. You can have all the time in the world.
Well, in 1976, when I started, I was sent to the police academy, and they trained police officers for 240 hours. And they put a badge on you, and you went into town, and they pointed you to the car and where to get gas. And that was essentially the start of the career.
Wow.
Today, police officers go for about a year and a half just of training, of which I think like 750 hours now is just in the academy. The changes I saw primarily were, I believe I came in a time on the heels of the latter 60s ending, the Vietnam War ending. It was a period of a decade of civil unrest. So the the policing style, as it was referred to at the time, was traditional policing. So I started out in that model and slowly migrated as things began to change. Books were published, the universities were studying policing. Federal grants were starting to come out with something strange called community policing. And community policing versus traditional, which is more of a confrontation and more arrest-oriented. Community policing meaning interacting with the people that live in the community and solving the problems together. So I was a part of that transformation, that transition, whatever you'd like to call it. It was bumpy. It took a long time to get there. A lot of the motivation from the federal government is what really made the difference. Fitchburg specifically benefited to the tune of about 13 full-time police officers were hired under the federal grant to support the initiatives of community policing.
Wow.
And then I feel like today, as I'm leaving, I feel like it's transitioning again. I think, as we all know, there's a lot of questions about policing today, and a lot of thoughts across our great country are being asked. I think, though, from a positive standpoint, Fitchburg is ahead of the game in that regard. In our training, in our focus of communication, in our emphasis on a CIT, crisis intervention training. We have 25% of our department now trained in dealing with those that are suffering with a mental illness. A lot of change over 40 years. Those would be the styles of policing. What I also saw was this incredible surge of technology. When I started, the squad car had a toggle switch to turn on the lights, a spotlight, and a shotgun in the trunk. That was the police car.
Wow.
You get into it today, and I got to tell you, I purchased these things and I help with the planning application, but to look at it is truly intimidating. Laptop computers and cell phones and so on and so forth. I Googled the computers the other night. I was just kind of looking at the year I started. thinking about the young folks that have, excuse me, have come into this job and taking for granted the immediate information and how one can search essentially the world. Apple Computer Incorporated. They weren't selling computers. Apple came about close to the time that I had been getting into law enforcement. When I came to Fitchburg, remember, if you can, a copy machine was called like a Xerox?
Sure.
Almost like a mimeograph kind of thing, and carbon copies.
What is a carbon copy paper, Tom? I've never heard of this.
I know, so many haven't. So we didn't have the computers. We didn't have the cell phones. We had a number 2 pencil. The technology just wasn't there for that information, which I got to admit is a great benefit to our officers. It helps in so many ways to making good decisions and to making the department more efficient. Those are some of my highlights of the changes I've seen along the way.
And I'm just blown away. I cannot imagine the beginning years of starting that, where the squad was just a squad, and now that police car is more of it's an office on wheels. I mean,
well, I could take it back even further. Within the first year, not only were we the police, we were the ambulance. We had station wagons that we had a gurney in the back, we had oxygen, and you would provide basic first aid care and head off to the hospital. And if a police call was waiting, you would take care of your patient first, and then you'd come back to your call.
wow.
It was a very unique, when you look at Dane County today on how modern and efficient and technological they are. Just to go back to when I started in law enforcement, there was no 911. That didn't exist. There was no countywide ambulance system. Did not exist. But I'm glad that went away, because we have more than our share of things to do from the policing perspective.
I forgot about that. I'd done some history work on that. Gas and oxygen, that was your, those were your tools. And
Pretty much.
talk about what it was like to be the chief of police here in Fitchburg.
Well, I guess my first, without a lot of thought, response is I loved it. In my wildest dreams, I didn't imagine that I would be able to get to that point. I was very fortunate in a small department. As I mentioned earlier today, I was the 10th police officer hired. And to be in a small department, just think about it. You only have a couple of sergeants, and the opportunity to move up the ladder is fairly remote. And the only way, really, if you're ambitious, is to seek out a larger department. I'm fortunate that I didn't have to do that. I grew through the ranks, and finally, my ultimate career goal, becoming chief, to me was a real privilege to be able to get that position. One thing I always wanted to be sure was that I would never lose the trust of the people. And that's what I tried to stay with. Stay true to myself.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I think it'd be remorse if I didn't ask you to talk, some of your fondest memories of Fitchburg Police Department here. There's quite a few characters through the years. We've met quite a few officers, and as you said, growing through the ranks, a lot of officers have stayed here many years. But let's go down memory lane. What do you got for some stories?
I think the stories we're going to keep in the lockbox. Sometimes the what we call the cop humor may not be that well received. I think I think my fondest memories are growing with a growing city and a growing department. In the beginning, I mean, you look around now and you see what Fitchburg looks like. I remember when we were told McDonald's was coming to town, and they were actually going to build a McDonald's restaurant in Fitchburg. We thought we'd hit the jackpot. We actually were going to have a place to eat. So I think it's a two-part. So, you know, what brings a lot of the applicants to this city to be a police officer from all over the country, they Google us, they look us up, and they're fascinated what makes Fitchburg, Fitchburg. You know, on the one hand, there are those that'll criticize Fitchburg. We don't have a downtown, and we don't have a high school, and so on and so forth. Well, I think that's a bunch of baloney, because what makes us unique is our geography, our people that live here, and really the pride of the community that we're so unique that we live in. So the police officers come and they say, what attracted me to Fitchburg is the fact that on the north end of Fitchburg, you have an urban, dynamic, modern city environment. And I'm including Madison, you know, the overflow from that and our proximity. And then you have the suburbs. And then you have the farmland, taking up over 50% of our land mass in Fitchburg with the beautiful countryside and the farms. Are not as many animals as there used to be, but nonetheless, the beautiful farms are still there. And what a police officer gets out of something like that is if an officer works just in a challenged, difficult, say downtown neighborhood, I think after time you may lose perspective. You may lose some perspective of maybe our humanity and how we want to care for people, because sometimes you just see the bad. But what the officers get here is they get a taste of the rural and the suburban and the urban all rolled into one. So when some would say that that's a challenge, others would say that's an opportunity for us in how we recruit, and that's how we've done it down the road. So that would be one piece. The other piece, most importantly, is personally speaking, when a person is going through their career, so much focus can be spent on yourself. Your education, your self-improvement, what you need to get to the next level. The beautiful thing about becoming chief is that all erases off the board. It all goes away, and your feeling of satisfaction and personal achievement is through others. Seeing somebody get the job that had been trying so hard. Seeing a veteran that's been looking for a job finally land it. Seeing somebody that had career aspirations to be a sergeant to get it, so on and so forth. Those to me, watching the growth that we have had over the years has been, I think, my greatest personal accomplishment.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sticking with the staff, the police officers, and all the staff. There's more than just police officers down there. Throughout the years, what would you say about the staff that you've worked with all these years?
They're great. Great group of people. It's a cohesive group, friendly, they get along, a diverse group. But I'm going to say this too, they're young. It wasn't but a few years ago, I hired some folks that were younger than my children, and you take a step back and you say, wow. But you know what? The city's in good hands. They've got an outstanding police department that is highly skilled, trained, and who cares deeply about the community.
That's all you can ask for right there.
Well, absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the projects. You had mentioned it today during the ceremony. What are some of the projects that stand out for you that, as chief, you brought forward?
Well, as chief, prior to chief, like I said, with the grants, we had begun the community policing. I think it was our experimenting with community policing. Remember I said we're not like your typical city? We tried to stick that square peg in the round hole in the early years, and it wasn't quite the right fit. So after a number of different tries, I think we hit it. And we went to a model called district policing, a model that focuses and emphasizes problem solving. So taking community policing, rolling it into the opportunity as an individual officer, so 50 of them. So whereas I would have had 1 or 2 neighborhood officers, I now have 50. And those 50 can go out into the community. They're assigned to a district for 2 years. They get to know the people. They wave at them. It becomes personal. They work with areas maybe where we're having problems or apartment buildings. And their job isn't to keep going back on a disturbance call 100 times. The problem is figure out what is the root cause, what is the underlying issues that we're faced with here, and how can we work together to fix it? It works. I believe that this transition that we have made has put us on the path in the right direction to build better trust in our community, to focus on the neighborhoods and the people that need it most.
Absolutely. And we've had many officers, sergeants, lieutenants, whatever, have been on the show and promoting that piece, and I think you guys do a wonderful job with that.
Well, thank you. And you asked me some of the programs I was proud of most. I think one of our newer ones that we're doing is going to pay the greatest dividends, and that's the crisis intervention training. When I mentioned earlier, dealing with each officer that we're sending through there is getting 40 hours of intense training to better understand what issues people are facing in crisis at that time in their life so that we can react appropriately. 25% of the department is now trained, and it's growing. And I think the goal ultimately would be 100% of your department with that training to, to minimize those, what could lead to potentially a very bad outcome. Really, a person is calling out for help, and they need help at the time, and they may be reaching out in the wrong way. And our job and our model now is to get to know them, work with Journey Mental Health, assign officers almost as almost like a caseworker to get the job done. And that one I'm really proud of, and all of them. And I'll tell you why all the different specialized training. Remember a little bit earlier I was talking about limited opportunities, especially in a small department? We're not small, but we're middle-sized, and the opportunities are still limited. So how can we continue to train and get our officers to the professional goals that they want to attain? And that's called specialized training. And that's a win-win. It's a win for the officer, and it's a win for the community. So when we're able to have an honor guard to properly represent our department, and for other departments at the worst time for that department, we can be there for them. The set team, special events. We were able to take we had 3 cities a number of years ago that shared a common goal, a records management system. All of ours were failing. None of us really could afford a new one. None of us could certainly afford what we were dreaming of. But by bringing 3 cities together at the time, Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Fitchburg, planning for over a year on how we could build a system and share our records together and move information across these invisible boundaries. Wow, that was really big. And we still continue to grow today because why? We're interacting with these other departments. We're learning from them. They learn from us. We're all getting better. We then ramped it up to where we started training together. We started forming teams together. And what I mean by that is a specialized event team is for like a high-risk warrant service entry, highly trained and equipped officers for those situations. But a city the size of Fitchburg could never justify or afford the training that goes on each year. We now have a team of 18 between the three cities that we can, with a phone call, move between our boundaries and go help our fellow department out or city when the time arises. And that's great. That's a wonderful thing to be able to lean on. Those probably would be, I mean, the list is long when you look at this many years, and you know, you've only been waiting 7.5 years for me, so I should probably hold something back here, huh?
Well, so if it's going to be another 7 before I talk to you, yeah, you got to save something for that next interview.
Well, you're going to have to find me down in the senior center.
I did hear that a few times over.
Yes, you did.
Something about karaoke. I didn't know you were a singer, but
I'm not. I don't want to scare everybody away.
Oh, that's all right. Let's talk about the future of police from your eyes. So you're walking away and again, what you're saying is kind of maybe is another changing time in police. What do you think the future of police is in general?
Well, I think there's still, I would be wrong to characterize it as a gleaming and good moving forward. I think there's a lot of work to do. First, I think generally speaking, when I speak for Fitchburg, I think Fitchburg and the residents, they trust the police department. We haven't let that trust down. We've worked hard to build those relationships. But that's not something that you can just set the book down and walk away from and say mission accomplished. A couple of things. I think that's something you have to invest in each and every day, and how you talk to people on the phone, how you get back to them, how you treat them, how you follow through. Those are all the hallmarks of trust in building that relationship. But there's going to be challenges, you know? Things happen. Mistakes are made. I think the most important message down the road is mistakes are going to happen, and when they do, own up to them, admit them, learn, grow, and move forward. And I think one of the things that will help in growing that trust is we are now in the process of transitioning to the body cameras. The cameras on each of our officers, a lot of study has gone into that. And I know there's a number of thoughts and a number of, if you will, philosophies as to the good or the bad. But my upbeat attitude on the whole thing is those can be overcome.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you guys did your due diligence with the community meetings, trying to gather that input in there. And as you said, it's a trial and error thing when that starts. When you guys put it into play, you'll learn from it and you'll grow from it. This is a challenging one now, Tom. What advice would you give to the next chief, the next incoming chief?
Oh, that seems like a loaded question. Well, I think quite simply, you only get to make a first impression once. Give it some thought. You can only earn that trust once. If that's ever violated, it's pretty tough to get back. So live by your character and integrity, earn the trust, and remember who you're working for.
Good advice. Real quick, I got to ask this.
Okay.
Your retirement, what is Citizen Tom Blatter going to do now in retirement?
Well, it would be wrong if I were to give you a different answer today than I shared throughout the group today. And that is one word, nothing. I got some advice from some very good friends and some emails, and it said, don't be too quick to load up your calendar. Don't be too quick to make that commitment. You've spent 40-some years with a full calendar. Just step back. I'm going to step back.
Again, well deserved, well earned. Congratulations on the retirement.
Well, thank you.
So glad I got to sit down with you finally.
Well, you were just too nice, and you were persistent, and you were patient, so you earned it.
No, I appreciate it. Anything else, Tom, that you want to say that I didn't get to today that you want to mention?
No, I think you covered it well, and I think we had a nice chat here today. I think just the reassuring word that the community is in great hands. You have a wonderful group of police officers that are stepping up to the challenge each and every day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And good luck on retirement. Sorry.
Appreciate it.
All right. It is Chief Tom Blatter retires. Gonna miss the guy. And maybe I'll see him in 7 years down the road. This is Talking Fitchburg.